Oh howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Every time there is a new league, there are new toys to play around with, and sometimes those toys can modify the way that we use existing items in the game. Relic of the Pact is something that was originally added in patch 3.14, and it came back to quite a bit of fanfare more recently. It's something that a modest number of people continue to play, and in the current league, about 2 high-level characters out of every 1,000 are running a build that is based around Relic of the Pact. Now, this wand has some pretty complicated mechanics, but the big new toy that it's got is something quite unexpected. Honoured Tattoo of the Hatungo. This is something that you'll be able to stack multiple of on your passive tree, and it will overwrite a 10 int, 10 strength or 10 dex travel node on your passive tree, with instead 1% increased reservation efficiency of skills. This is both mana reservation efficiency and life reservation efficiency, and the life reservation efficiency is particularly interesting in the context of Relic of the Pact. Existing Relic of the Pact builds don't want this stat and will not use Honoured Tattoo of the Hatungo. However, it's something that could change the way people build this item and could result in some new builds being made around it. So how does Relic of the Pact work? It's a wand that grants you a skill called Blood Sacrament that you can't get any other way, and this skill is ridiculously powerful, but also has some pretty complicated mechanics. When you cast it, it's like charging up a Flameblast over time, and it slowly reserves more and more of your life until you then let go of the charge. When you release the charge, it goes boom and does a lot of damage. The precise mechanics though are really important on this one because this is something that does not just go into a normal build, it's something that requires a lot of messing around with. And it's also about the only reservation skill in the game where you actively want to massively increase the reservation on it. So each stage of Blood Sacrament takes 200 milliseconds base cast time to channel. Keep that number in mind. Now the big divergence from Flameblast is that for Flameblast, the number of stages is an important stat on the skill. For Blood Sacrament, it's not. All that matters is the amount of life that's reserved, and how many stages it takes you to get to the desired amount of life is a complete non-factor in how good the skill is when you actually stop channeling it and let it go. This is a skill that deals a very small amount of base damage, 21 to 32 physical damage, and has only 3% effectiveness of added damage. Because this 3% number is so small, people generally don't use it with support gems like added chaos support, and don't try and stack increased lightning damage to spells or other similar mechanics on their character. It's not that you can't do this, it's just that the skill doesn't pull you in this direction. This skill has ridiculous scaling with the amount of life that you're reserving. 40% more damage with ailments and 80% more damage with hits per 10 life reserved by this skill. If your character has 12,500 life, which is quite possible to get with Calm's Heart, Dissolution of the Flesh, and a number of other items that are dedicated to providing life, in that situation, if you reserve 80% of your total life pool, then this is going to be a total of 10,000 life that you've reserved, and when you let go of it, you're therefore going to get 80,000% more damage with hits. This is multiplied by 801, and that's quite a large number. This is why this skill does so much damage. Additionally, the radius of the skill increases per 1% of life reserved by the skill, so if you're reserving 80% of 12,500 life, then you're going to be getting plus 24 to the radius, which is a pretty big deal, especially if you've got other sources of AoE on your character. Now on top of this, you're going to get a large amount of Lifeleech, 2% of damage leached as life, and a lot of the builds that are established around this item actually convert that into damage mitigation through the use of a Timeless Jewel. The other 2 pieces of the puzzle for this build tend to be Rathpinth Globe, which was buffed massively in patch 3.19, and now if you have 12,500 maximum player life, it's going to grant you 625% increased spell damage and 625% increased critical strike chance at the expense of this annoying text, sacrifice 10% of your life when you use or trigger a spell skill. However, this works really well with Dissolution of the Flesh as well. And the final piece of the puzzle is Essence Worm, an item that almost no one has used since it was overhauled in patch 3.16, but you are going to be one of the exceptions. You actually primarily want this for its drawback, 80% reduced reservation efficiency of skills. Now the key thing with the Honoured Tattoo of the Hatungo is that this lets you more finely tune this number. So you can make it 79%, you can make it 78%, 77% by sacrificing a couple of travel nodes in order to fit more and more of these new tattoos onto your character. That then gives you a very fine level of control, because one of the key things with Blood Sacrament is that it is something you want to very finely manage. The most popular current setup uses everything we've discussed. Essence Worm raises its reservation to 10% of your life, And then they use life tap support, not really for its extra damage or other effects, but simply to triple the Reservation. So that's 300%. They use second wind support, which has a mana multiplier of 200%, which is again used solely to double the cost of the spell. And that brings it up to 60% of their life. And then they'll typically use one support gem dedicated to damage, which one can vary, but the most popular choices will raise it to 78 or 84% of the player's life pool, and that's going to depend on whether they're converting damage or not, and a number of other factors. But what if you were willing to sacrifice a little bit of the convenience of this skill, and you were willing to charge 2 stages in exchange for the tremendous bonus of doing a lot more damage? Well, the new option that you've got with Relic of the Pact, you can elect not to use second wind support. Second wind is only used because of the doubling of the reservation cost. It's not used for any damage, it doesn't provide any, and you can replace that with a different support gem that just provides damage. Once you've done that, you're then able to finely tune your reservation efficiency through the use of a couple of honoured tattoos of the Hatungo, and your goal here is going to be to get the reservation as close to 50% as you are comfortable with without exceeding 50%. For example, you might decide that the right spot for it to be is 46%. In that situation, when you don't need a devastating hit, you can just charge it to 46% and release. But if you do need a devastating hit, you've got the option of going all the way up to 92% of your life reserved. The thing that I like the most here is the flexibility. Having the option of doing either a 46% or a 92% of your life blood sacrament gives you a lot of flexibility if, for instance, you've taken a hit recently and your dissolution of the flesh is therefore already reserving 17% of your life because you got hit by a monster. Well, in this situation, you still have the fallback option of just using the 46% version, which doesn't do as much damage, but it might be enough to get you out of trouble for 2 seconds so that your dissolution of the flesh drawback can go away. Likewise, if you need to do absolutely massive damage, then this setup has more top-end damage as well. Ultimately, it's going to come down to a balancing act. Do you prefer to be locked in to one very well working skill that you can use all the time? In that case, stick with the existing Relic of the Pact builds and don't use these new tattoos. On the flip side, if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of that raw power for some versatility, then maybe the Honoured Tattoo of the Hatungo is exactly what you need in order to take a Relic of the Pact build further than before. One last thing though that's very important, please do not attempt to league start a build that is absolutely reliant on Relic of the Pact. While this item tends to be moderately affordable by mid-league because it has a 20% drop rate, it does only come from the Trial Master in Ultimatum, and that is something that is very hard to access on day one. Day one, this requires you to get access to Ahua Totli, requires you to get access to the Vaal Omnitect, requires you to do Uberatsuri, and it also requires you to do the Vaal Temple bosses. None of these are trivial, especially in the dumpster gear that people have on day one. As a result, there are very few Ultimatum aspects available for trade early in the league. They're all expensive, and the first relics of the pack that exist in a league will generally be very, very expensive. So this item might be dozens of divines, the first couple of ones that drop. Over time it will come down, but don't count on getting it day 1, 2, or 3 of a league. Make sure that you've got a plan for them. Also, we have no idea how rare the Honoured Tattoo of the Hatungo will be. It could be something you can pick up in Trade League for 25 chaos each, or it could be something that is absolutely a toy of the 1%. We'll find that out once we're able to play in 3.22, but again, that's a very good reason not to league start this setup. It's something that you might respec into later, or alternately, play as a second character. That's all I got on this. May your Varlorbs have interesting results.